Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm giving people a few seconds to join from the waiting room. My name is Sabrina Paganoni, and I'm speaking from the HEALEY and AMG Center for ALS and Mass General, and I'm here with our patient navigator, Catherine Small. So thank you again for joining for our weekly webinar. And as you know, the trial really is a fantastic collaborative project. We support from so many industry partners, academic partners, and patient foundations and different groups. So thank you again for following us every week, and we can go to the next slide. And as you know, the platform trial is a perpetual adaptive trial. So in 2022, we have had 5 regimens that have been participating in the trial. And I do want to say it's amazing that we're almost at 2023, but we will have more regimens for 2023, and we'll announce them over the next few weeks. Next slide. So specifically right now, we're enrolling new participants in one of the 5 regimens, and it's Regimen E, which is testing trialos, which is a drug manufactured by Silos Therapeutics. And we are making good progress on with enrollment. And so far, a little over 150 individuals have signed informed consent, and 112 have randomized within Regimen E. So thank you so much to all of you who are participating, if we're supporting someone who's participating, or just spreading awareness and sharing news about the trial. So thank you so much. Really important to complete enrollment within those the new regimens, so that we can have results next year. And again, we'll keep you posted. We certainly have a few more slots available, and so please contact your sites. If you can get to the next slide, we are currently enrolling at 51 sites. As you can see, they are really spread across the country, and they include both sites labeled in blue that have been with us since the very beginning of the study, as well as sites labeled in green that have been added at some point during the trial. So we really love that we have, people that have been part of the trial from the very beginning, different sites, and as well as new ones really wanted to join. So please contact your sites if you're interested in participating. Next slide. And as always, if you have questions about which sites are close to you, or where you can get more information, please contact Catherine, who's here today, as well as Alison, at the phone number or email on the slide. And then again, the QR codes are other helpful resources for you to get connected. So we just want to let you know that we are going to cancel a couple of webinars coming up due to the NEALS conference, which is happening on November 1st, and of course Thanksgiving Day. But we always love to have guest speakers, and I see that tonight we have one of our site PIs join us, Dr. Amanda Peltier. Thank you so much, from Vanderbilt in Tennessee. And so with that, if we can go to the next slide, or just if you can help us, these are just slides to show how you can also always view previous webinars, but for tonight, really want to give the stage to Dr. Peltier, who can tell us more about her site in Nashville, Tennessee. Amanda?
All right, well, thank you, Dr. Paganoni. So I'm sorry I got on a little bit late. We're just finishing up with EMGs, which I'm sure many of you have had, unfortunately, and probably did not enjoy. I'm at Vanderbilt, which is in Nashville, Tennessee. We are in the middle of Tennessee, and if you want to go to the next slide. But Vanderbilt actually pulls in from county hospitals all over Tennessee, and then we actually pull in a fair amount of patients from Western Kentucky and Northern Kentucky, as well as Northern Alabama, Southern Indiana as well, just because as far as where the closest big center that are doing ALS studies is you have to go up to Lexington, Kentucky, or down to Birmingham, Alabama, or west out to St. Louis, Missouri. So we bring in a fairly wide swath of patients. And then next slide. And so this is all of our providers. Dr. Burnett on the bottom row is our pediatric provider. So you guys wouldn't be seeing, nobody would be seeing him, but we have 2 nurse practitioners to the top right here. And then the rest of us are all neuromuscular specialists who've been at Vanderbilt And Dr. Howard is actually our VA neuromuscular specialist. And next slide. And so we've been around as an ALS multidisciplinary clinic since 2008. Dr. Peter D'Onofrio pulled together all of the allied staff. We've been an MDA-sponsored clinic since 1974. And we were in the Ice Bucket Challenge. We actually, this is actually one of my patients, and the picture's a little pixelated. He actually lived with ALS for almost 15 years. And was a diehard University of Tennessee fan. So it's a shame that he missed the last game, because he would have been all over the win over Alabama. Next slide. And so we have a pulmonologist as well as a pulmonary nurse practitioner, respiratory therapy, social work. We have palliative care, speech therapy, physical therapy, occupational therapy, nutrition, assistive technology. We have 2 full-time research coordinators, and we have had 10 patients who've randomized in HEALEY. We had 13 patients who were screened for HEALEY. So we have and so we've been a pretty active site. So we were activated last year in 2021, and we have been enrolling patients. That we're having a little problem with Regimen E, because for whatever reason, our legal team doesn't like us to do anything off-site. So the infusions that are weekly for Regimen E are a little bit challenging for us at the moment. So next slide. So that's just basically about our clinic. And I'm happy to answer questions or talk about the studies or talk about our clinic in general. So
thank you so much. And if anyone has any questions for Dr. Peltier, please put them in the Q&A. I do have a question about participation in the platform trial and availability of Relibrio, which is the new drug that was just approved by the FDA. And so I'm happy to start, and then maybe Amanda, you can share your thoughts. But actually, I'm glad, very timely. We have been discussing this topic extensively, as you may imagine, both with our patient advisory committee, our CPIs like Dr. Peltier and other other sites, as well as our industry partners. And so today, actually, we share the guidance that's really the fruit of a collaborative effort from all angles. And so what we are a couple of thoughts. So first of all, people who are in the open label extension of the study, whether if it's other regimen C or D or regimen E, some people are already in the open label extension study of regimen E, they can start Relibrio at any time. So for people who are in the randomized controlled portion of the trial of Regimen E specifically, our preference, and again, it's a preference, would be that they wait to start Relibrio until they start the open label extension. However, if for different reasons, for clinical reasons, in consultation with their physician, if they cannot wait, they will be allowed to start, and there will be a protocol violation noted in the database. I would say that it's still unknown exactly when individual people will have Relibrio available to them, because obviously it's going to become available in the pharmacies sort of in November, and then for each individual person, and the timelines for insurance approval may vary, and they're quite frankly a little bit unpredictable. So we're optimistic. We hope that people will have it approved and shipped to them soon. But again, we don't know until we get there, and specifically it may vary from person to person. So so essentially, because of all of these, again, if people can wait to start until they are in the open label extension, so certainly that would be our preference. And the reason for that is because it would allow us to our statisticians will have an easier time telling if Regimen E drug works or not. So every time you introduce a new variable, you run the risk of confounding the results. And so certainly, because the primary goal of Regimen E is to be able to tell us if trehalose works or not for the treatment of ALS. The fewer variables, extra variables we introduce, the better. So especially, I would say, for people who are close to entering open label extension, hopefully again the timelines will align, and that will be our preference. So again, that's our recommendation, that the preference is to wait. That said, we understand that that may not be possible, or for different reasons, and so ultimately we defer to your discussion with your study physician. So Amanda, do you have any comments on this?
No, I totally, that is exactly what we would recommend, because of, or the other option would be is that they would be stable on Relibrio for 3 months before starting, which is the other, before starting regimen.
Yeah. Again,
and
the
a lot of it's
guidance,
going to depend on, how long it takes to get all the patients that we are hoping to get for Regimen E. And if most of them are going to be enrolled before they start, it would make sense. But generally, that is the idea, is you either want them stable on a drug or have not started a drug, just to minimize the complications of starting a new drug right at the, around
in the middle of a
time,
trial, right? So
again,
again, the goal of the trial is to tell if trehalose works or not. And
yes.
So anything that we introduce that could confound the results, again, could confound or limit our ability to tell if the drug works or not. So if people are in Regimen E and they can wait to start Relibrio until they start the open label extension, that is absolutely our preference. And again, obviously we are in a unique situation where we don't know when Relibrio will be accessible to that individual person. So again, that's the guidance that we issued today, and I want to thank again the patient advisors, all the partners, and all the physicians for sort of helping us issue this guidance today. In fact, it was shared with all the sites, so please contact your site.
Yes.
Yeah. So actually, question for you, do you offer any expanded access, or I guess, are you interested in offering expanded access at your site?
Expanded access as far as for regimens that were already closed?
In general,
or
yeah, in
open or
general. Yeah.
I think that right now we have not looked into that, frankly. So we obviously are part of the open label programs for all the medications that are open. Obviously, the open label program for Regimen A was closed because it didn't show effectiveness, and given the risk profile for Regimen A, we wouldn't recommend doing that particular medication. For Diprostat, I believe,
right, that's closed, right?
That was closed as well. And so, so I personally wouldn't recommend it, just because I don't think there's enough data to support it.
Right. I guess the question is in the
STEA
future.
is still open.
Yeah.
And so STEA, we would look into that.
Okay, great. So question for you, are you prescribing Relibrio yet in general for patients not in the trial, like in general in your practice?
We have had every single patient who is not currently in a trial ask for Relibrio. So I have signed my life away on multiple forms for this medication. So we will see what happens.
Right, so essentially we can start prescribing, but nobody has received it yet, I guess, also
right.
kind of implied in the
Correct.
question. So that again, that's the new standard of care. We're starting to prep. So for people who may have questions, obviously you can always contact Amylyx Pharmaceuticals. They have something called the ACT or ACT program for patients, so you can Google it and go online. Or maybe Catherine, if you could gently put the link to this on the chat, so that if people have questions, they can contact Amylyx directly in terms of how to get started on the prescription. But I can tell you that essentially there is a form. That's what Dr. Peltier was referring to. There is a form where it requires signatures from both the patient and the physician. And actually there's a couple of signatures on the part of the patient and a couple of signatures for the physician. And so that begins the process. And again, nobody has received the drug yet, but the process can start. And in fact, we're all starting that for people who are asking. And even for people who are, yeah, go ahead.
I would say a lot of our patients who are asking for it are patients who are past that 36-month, who are no longer eligible for any of the current research studies. Who, I mean, so they're, so that is the biggest option for them at this point.
Right. But even for people who are in trials, again, you can always start the process, right? So so basically we can start the process, and then we hope that the drug will be available soon. But again, there are uncertainties about that, or we don't know yet. Great. And Dr. Peltier, could you tell us how do you speak about research to your patients, or what's the conversation in your clinic?
So I speak about research pretty early, because when I'm giving a diagnosis of ALS, I often talk about, okay, here is the FDA approved options, and then here are the options for research. And part of that also depends on the patient. So if patients are presenting early enough where they are eligible for the research trials, I'll obviously go into more depth about that. And we talk about the fact that we don't know whether or not they will help or not. But we give them those discussions and those options, and invite them to call us back and talk to our study coordinators if they want to hear more about it. And we definitely don't want like an answer on the spot, because we want people to have time to think about it and think about what they want to do. But we talk about it fairly early, especially because a lot of the research studies, the enrollment criteria typically is within 24 months to 36 months from the time they've had symptoms. And a lot of patients, by the time they get to us, it's already a year or sometimes has gone by. And so, so that's part of the reason why we talk about it early. Just because also most of the data and most of the studies have been most promising when started early, as opposed to starting later in the course of somebody's disease. So, so that's part of the other reason why I talk about it very early in the process.
Great. And so for people who are in Tennessee or in your area, how do they get in contact with you, your clinic, and again, getting in touch with your research group?
Right. So we should have our research phone number online, and if not, I can send it out to everybody. So Diana Davis has been our primary research coordinator for many years. She's been with us for probably 12 years. So she's very experienced in these studies. So I know her number has been published online, but I will be happy to provide it. And people can also just call the clinic at 615-936-0060, and we can patch them through as well.
Okay, great. A question for you also. Do you talk to your patients about supplements? Would you recommend them?
So yes, we talk about that. And actually one of my colleagues, Dr. Lee, loves acylcarnitine, and he gives it to everybody. We will bring it up, but we talk about it. We talk about, what data is out there. I'm on the fence about some of the supplements, because some of the supplements have better evidence than others. And I also try to be mindful of patients' wallets, because it's very easy to spend a huge amount of money on supplements with plus minus efficacy. And so so we do have a lot of conversations about those, but yes, we have a lot of people in our clinic who take supplements. So
Great. Well, I'm glad there were a few questions for you specifically, so that we got to know you and your clinic. Anything else that you want to share about your clinic before we wrap up?
Well, hopefully once, now that we're getting through the pandemic, we used to have usually live music, and people would come and perform. So hopefully that will come back. And then we also have developed a partnership with a foundation called Live Like Lou, who is working with our local FIDEL chapter. And our FIDEL chapter is being restarted at Vanderbilt. So we are hoping to have some of our FIDEL fraternity members volunteer in clinic and volunteer in patients with patients as well. So and we're working on actually trying to recruit a basic scientist to have more phase 1 studies starting at Vanderbilt.
Wonderful. So thank you so much for all the work you do to bring the trial and research in general to the people in your area. So again, it's really great to get to know you. actually, there's
One more?
one more question. So there was a question about the question about, again, Relibrio and trials.
Oh, yes.
So in general, just to clarify, whenever we do a trial, we can really only test one thing, one drug at a
Yes.
time. So we test a new drug on top of something that we already know about. So the concern is mostly to introduce new variables while we're doing the test, essentially. That
Yes.
just to
Yes.
clarify. And so that's why, again, for in this case, introducing Relibrio midway through the trial could confound the results. I do want to make a note that for future regimens, then it's different, because for future regimens, meaning that they have not started yet, then we can have everyone on a stable dose before they start. And we also do something behind the scenes that that may not be obvious. I want to explain it. Per FDA guidance, we stratify by background medications. So we essentially have equal numbers of people on riluzole and edaravone in both the active and the placebo arm, because, again, that was kind of planned and structured that way. In the future, we will have equal riluzole, radicava, and Relivrio in the two cohorts.
Yes.
We cannot structurally do that kind of stratification right now, because we are in the middle of it. So it's actually very different. The only regimen that's affected essentially is the ongoing regimen, or Regimen E. In the future,
Yes.
we will have a way to handle that. So it's not a problem. Everyone will be on stable doses of 3 medications if they want to have all 3 on board, obviously. And we can stratify by that. That will remove the confounding. The problem is when you do something, the problem is when the standard of care changes in the middle of the trial. So I know it's a little bit technical, but I just wanted to explain that again. It's really something we're really trying to balance everything here and do something that's patient-centered, although respecting the fact that we also want to know if Trialos works or not.
Right. And that's the thing. I think we want to protect our patients in the sense of we don't want them to have to go through a study and have not great data come out of it because of another variable started. And then you don't know whether or not the medication worked or not. And then, and then they have, and then that time, is not as helpful, so it's for the patient's benefit to not introduce that variable if possible, so that we can get the cleanest data to know, does Trehalose work or not?
Exactly. So essentially, for us to know if Trehalose works or not, again, if people could wait until the open label extension, that would be the preference. And last question, I know there's somebody again asking how many people are already in Regimen E. I believe it's 112 in terms of people who are already in the study, just so that people understand why there are different numbers on the slides. So there is an initial screening process, and the number of people who will be screened is a little bit higher. It's a little over 150. However, not everyone may be eligible to participate, or some people we don't know yet. They are still in that screening process. And so we know that for sure 112 spots have been taken. Then again, we have a few more available to get to 160. Some of those people may already be in screening and may be assigned soon. So overall, I think, that the sooner we enroll in Regimen E, the sooner we will complete the 6 months placebo-controlled trial, and the sooner we will know if Trehalose works. And obviously, now that we have 3 drugs as standard of care, it would really be wonderful to have a 4th one. So that's why we're testing many of these drugs.
And it's a lot better now, because at least patients now, it's a 6-month trial, as opposed to, the original trials were all much longer in duration. So it's a much quicker process.
Right. So
historically,
historically in the past, many of these trials were longer. And so with the platform trial, we basically have statistical models to be able to tell if the drug works or not in a shorter time frame, which is what we want to do to screen new drugs as quickly as possible. And that's why we're trying to preserve that 6 months, so that we can screen them effectively and then give answers to the entire community. Okay, great. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And I'm sure we'll have you back on this webinar. And thank you everyone for joining us. And we'll see you again next week.
All
Thank you so
right.
much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.